Do you want to make a difference in the world?
And see the lives of the people of India and all internationals transformed with the gospel?
As India goes, all Asia will go with it.
Living the Dream podcast provides tools for you to pray, give, and go
as you become an active participant in the Great Commission
and help your church's demographic represent the demographic of your community.
Get ready to find your strategy for reaching your community and changing the world here at Living the Dream podcast with your host, Pastor Kevin.
Good morning. I'm Pastor Kevin, founder and executive director of Global Hope India, and your host for Living the Dream podcast. This is where the church gathers to mobilize in order to effectively reach the community and change the world, including all the foreign-born internationals moving into our communities. I interview today's top church leaders from around the world so we can learn all we can about reaching internationals with the gospel and partnering with them in the Great Commission. It's time the church has this conversation. Go to globalhopeindia.org/resources for tools for your success. Now, let's jump into today's show. Today, I am so excited to talk about the red car. You know, every one of us that have bought a car before has had this happen. But just imagine for a moment that you buy a red car. You drive it off the lot, you're driving it around, and all of a sudden, what do you begin to see? Before, you weren't conditioned, you weren't thinking about red cars, but you bought a red car. Everywhere you turn, you see red cars coming toward you. You see red cars approaching the intersection. You see red cars turning off, and you notice all the red cars, and you especially notice the red cars that are like you. That's been one of the phenomenons that I've seen as Global Hope India has taken nearly 1,000 people now over to India. I've watched this time and time again where you'll take an American person, you take them over to India. Once you're there in India, you meet the beautiful people of India and you see the culture of India. You eat the food, you taste the spices, you tour the markets, you lose your mind in the traffic of the roads of India, and you have this life-changing experience, and you come back to America, and all of a sudden you begin to notice all the internationals that have been around you the entire time, and they begin to stand out to you, and you see them in your library, you see them in your community, you see them in your office, you see them in the marketplace, and everywhere you turn, you begin to see the people of India and other nationalities. And now when you come back, not only do you begin to notice them, but you want to talk to them. They're actually more than just a stranger that you've bought gas from, or that is a waiter in a restaurant. They're more than your doctor. They're more than your nutritionalist. They're more than your professor in college. And you actually have something that you would want to talk to them about. 3 of the most enduring words you'll ever say to an international is, "I've been there." And I've watched hearts melt over and over as I've been able to look into the eyes of friends from India living here in the U.S. and to be able to begin a conversation by saying, "Are you from India?" And they say, "Yeah." And I say, "What part?" They're blown away that you would ask what part, because to everyone else that has never been to India, all you know is India. And you hope that you got that right. But then to be able to say Hyderabad or Mumbai or Delhi or Chennai, "Oh, you know Chennai?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just got back from Chennai. I've been there." And you have such an entry into their life. Your trust factor just went way up. 99% of internationals will immediately open up their hearts and their time as a result of us saying, "I've been there." All of a sudden, you have instant conversation, and the relationship can develop as much as you are willing. I've struck up conversations with thousands of internationals saying, "I've been there." And yet, I've never heard anyone respond, "So what? Go away." Actually, I've had many great friends. I've made many great friends as a result of simply saying, "I've been there." Statistics show that less than 5% of all Americans have actually been overseas. And so for an international to be here living in our community and to have someone say, I've been there, it's so enduring to their ears. Not only do you show interest in them as a person, but you have embraced their place of birth and the country, the people that they love so much. Indian people have so much national pride. They love India. You know, I grieve as I see some of the political discussions here in the U.S. and don't really want to get into that discussion here, but we've all seen it, of the racism and just the heated debates among Republicans and Democrats, and a large variety of political topics and issues, flag burnings and athletes that don't want to stand during the national anthem. And my point is, the friends from India and most internationals take great pride in their places of birth and in their country. So a mission trip to India shows you the beautiful people of India. It immerses you in the culture of India. You'll get to eat the food of India. Maybe you like it very spicy. Most people are very fascinated by the markets of India, but they are unnerved by the traffic and the roads. I remember one time we took a choir over to India of 60 from a local church here in the USA, and there were 2 buses, about approximately 30 to 35 people on each bus, and we were coming back from one of the programs, and the bus driver just realized in bus number 1 that he had missed a stop. So there were guardrails in the median. He could not just make a U-turn and go in the right direction. So he just did a 3-point turn in the highway and started going in the direction of oncoming traffic. And he had to do that for 3 miles until he got back to the exit. A lot at that moment, it's around midnight or so, and a lot of people were asleep. But when he did that turn, anybody that was awake immediately woke up everybody else on the bus with their screams and anguish of fear that they were vocalizing, and they began to just watch what was happening. Every American was unnerved, but that was common occurrence in India, and he made it very safely to the next exit, and he went, instead of going up the exit, he went back down and then crossed under the bridge and then went onto the right direction. It was a memorable experience for all the Americans on the bus.
A story from the mission field.
One of the funny things in India is because of the language barrier, you may not be able to know whether you need to ask for a toilet or a bathroom or a washroom. They do think it's very funny that we call our restrooms bathrooms here, because in most places in India, you don't necessarily take a bath. It would be very unusual for anyone to see a bath, but they do a lot of bucket showers and normal showers. If you're in public and you're needing to go to the bathroom, it has become the universal language of India to just raise your pinky. You can go into a restaurant. You can be sitting there and say, I need to go to a bathroom, or you can be in a church. You can be anywhere in India, and all you have to do is raise your pinky, and everyone automatically knows this person needs to relieve themselves. They need to pee, and I need to show them where to go. And it doesn't matter if you are in a movie theater or in the most rural village in India. If you'll just raise your pinky, they will show you to a toilet. That might be a tree. It could be outdoor in nature. It could be inside in a squatty potty or with a Western toilet, but they will take you somewhere where you can relieve yourself. Raise your pinky if you need to pee.
Nothing boosts reaching internationals more than saying, I've been there. Global Hope India has taken nearly 1,000 people on short-term mission trips and seen both Americans and Indians radically transformed. Experience a life-changing adventure. If you're looking to see people far from God raised to life in Christ, then GHI is your opportunity. See our mission trips at globalhopeindia.org/go. There's definitely a trip for you.
Know your numbers. Maybe you've seen the show Shark Tank, and you've seen the business owners come in to pitch to the sharks and explain why they're the right person to execute the vision for their business. Well, we believe that you are the right person to execute the vision for your church, and you need to know your numbers.
Here's the breakdown of religions of faith within the 4.6 billion Asians. Of that, 25% identify themselves as Hindu. 24% identify themselves as Muslim. 21% are not even affiliated with any group, but then you have 12% identifying themselves as Buddhist. 9% that identify themselves as a folk religion, very local religion, or an ancestral religion, and then 7% that identify themselves as Christian. So what we can see real quickly, of the 4.6 billion Asians, a quarter of them say that they're Hindu, another quarter say that they are Muslim, only 7% identify as Christian. Something to think about. Know your numbers. Our friends in church leadership listening to this podcast, if you're new to the call to reach internationals, might be overwhelmed with the idea. You mean you're asking me to go reach all of this variety of people? I wish I could have said I chose India, but really God chose India for me. I was born in Western North Carolina, and there were no Indians living in North Carolina whenever I was growing up. And then I'm in church, 30 years old, and a man stands up and says, I've been called to lead a pastor's conference in India, and would want everyone to pray that someone will go with me as a prayer partner. And I sensed God say, you need to go. And I said, if you'll provide, then I'll go. And God provided, and I went. And I just see how by the grace of God, He chose India for me. And it has been such a gift. I went on a trip hoping that I could do some good for the people that I would be serving. But I look back, and God has used India to change my life. In 1972, Dr. Billy Graham said, as India goes, all of Asia will go with her. And so when you think of reaching internationals, it can be very daunting and very overwhelming. There are 7 billion alive. There are 3 billion that are unreached by the gospel, and one of those billion call India home. So 1/3 of all people without access to know about Jesus, or with very limited access to know about Jesus, are living in the country of India. And so by focusing in on the people of India, you are now having influence not only in the billion people living in India, but there are 4.6 billion in Asia. And Dr. Billy Graham said, as India goes, all of Asia will go with her. And so one of the strategic ways that we can be a part of reaching the unreached is to reach internationals and empower them to take the gospel to their people. And so, yes, if you are able to focus in on people from Korea and Japan and China and Vietnam, by all means do that. But one of the obvious places to start is among the people of India. And so let's go back to that red car. You go on a mission trip, you're there immersed in the culture, you're surrounded by the beautiful people of India, and then 10 days later you come back to the U.S., and all of a sudden you begin to see friends from India everywhere. And not just the people of India, but you notice internationals, Asians and Africans and all internationals, and you just understand God deposited a lot of investment into you to break your heart for the unreached people on planet Earth. You realize not only do I have opportunity to go to the foreign mission field, but the foreign mission field has been brought to me. And if I'm going to be faithful as a missionary by going, then let me be faithful as a missionary in how I live my life in reaching the internationals right here in our community. I just want to issue a challenge. This is just a practical observation that any church staff member can make. If you look around your congregation and you see a group of internationals and you have not yet gone to their country, been on a mission trip of their place of birth, why not? It will dramatically increase the effectiveness of reaching the internationals in your congregation with the strategy of changing the world. I totally appreciate the conversations I've had with many church leaders around the U.S. that have identified neighborhoods within the shadow of their steeple, per se, that they desire to have a witness to. And they are looking for bridge events. And we're talking about that on our future episodes. And they're just strategizing on how they can be effective in reaching this particular community in and around their church. I challenge church leaders that are having that discussion to consider taking an international mission trip to the birthplace of the people that you're wanting to reach here in the USA. It will educate you, empower you, and equip you to have an identifiable strategy for reaching the community. God's end goal is not that they be reached. He said, "Go ye therefore and make disciples." His end goal is that they be empowered to take the gospel to their community. And so if a church is just simply looking at how can we reach them, we're only halfway there. We need to be looking at how can we empower them and make disciples that will then take the gospel to the international community. That's a vision for changing the world. Every month, there are teams from the U.S. serving in India through GHI, and we take them there to empower the church in India, never to replace them. So the same thing is true here in the U.S. We don't need to look at how we can simply reach the international community, but how we can empower them and make disciples so that they can reach their community. That's a strategy to change the world. Reach the international community in order to change the world. That's the point of this podcast. That's what all of our resources are about. Everything is to equip and empower you with an identifiable strategy to reach the internationals in your community to change the world. I just think it's very interesting just to consider this red car experience. I would just challenge every American to just consider a red car experience where you actually go on a foreign mission trip and you come back and all of a sudden you begin to notice the people who have been right here all along, the people that God is moving right into your community. You know, we think of Revelation 7, 9, and 10 of every nation, every tongue, every tribe worshiping Jesus, and that's what it's going to look like in heaven. And so I long for every American believer in Jesus Christ, brother and sister, to have that red car experience where you come back and all of a sudden you realize the international community that's been right around you the whole time. You know, I just want to speak to why we need this red car experience. And just looking at international cultures compared to the U.S. culture, we are a drive into our driveway, put the garage door up, drive in and put the garage door down kind of culture. And we have very little contact with each other. And we're actually offended nowadays if somebody rings our doorbell. We're suspicious of that instead of blessed by that. But internationals visit with one another a lot more than Americans do. And that's just good community. And if you make community with internationals, it's going to reap blessing in your life. Indians actually have a whole day they spend just celebrating friendship. You know, we have a lot of marketed holidays around Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and Father's Day, and those are all great. But they have a day where they literally just take time thanking friends for being friends. We could learn a lot from internationals about being friends. Internationals celebrate a lot more. Now, we pick on the people from India because it's like every other day they're having another festival, another holiday, and we can have a lot of fun together exploring the differences in our cultures. One of the things I've noticed about the Indian community is that they really make a big deal of a child's first birthday, and it's almost like a wedding. The entire family from both sides come together, and they have a big feast, and they celebrate that. You probably have heard the differences about weddings. A Christian wedding in the U.S. or a standard U.S. wedding these days lasts 30 minutes, if not less. But yet in India, it's not uncommon for a wedding celebration to go on for a week. Hindu or Muslim festivals are occurring every other week, and internationals are now beginning to celebrate Western holidays like Valentine's Day and Christmas Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. And so it's like they are looking for every opportunity to celebrate, and we could have a lot of fun celebrating life with them and having that red car experience, realizing the blessing of the internationals living in our community with us. I think one of the reasons that it's endearing to an international to hear us say the words, "I've been there," is because they can now appreciate the investment that was made for you to go there. So they have traveled the same distance, just in the opposite direction, but most of the time they are here without the majority of their relatives. There are many changes to their life that they have made in order to come here. It means that you know what it's like to be a foreigner. You know what it's like for food to be different and the experience to be so different. There's an affinity that you now share with every international you come in contact with because you've been where they are. Maybe they've been here now 10 years and they're as Americanized as anyone born in the U.S., but they will still remember that time. They will relate to that. They will appreciate that. They will value that. And you'll be saying, I've been where you are. I know what it's like to walk in your shoes. And you can talk to them about their place of birth and about your trip. They would be fascinated to hear even the faith components of your trip. It's one of the easiest entries into just giving a witness for Christ without you having to have a track in your back pocket to do that. If you just be natural and just have a relationship. So 2 things to think about as we recap this. If you want to become more effective, I encourage you to please consider going on an international mission trip. If you want to become more empathetic on what it feels like to be an international, I encourage you to go on a short-term mission trip. It will change your life, and it will empower you to reach the internationals in order to change the world.
We want to hear from you. We've set up a dedicated phone line to record your 3-minute story at 817-66-DREAM. Have you experienced the power of the words, "I've been there," as a result of going on an international missions trip? We want to know. Call 817-66-DREAM and leave your message. If we pick your message, we'll send you a free Living the Dream t-shirt. Check it out on our website, 817-66-DREAM.
Thank you for listening to the Living the Dream podcast, empowering and equipping church staff with an identifiable and measurable strategy for reaching internationals and changing the world. You can help us live the dream by liking, commenting, subscribing to this podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can find more resources to empower and equip your church staff at globalhopeindia.org/resources. That's globalhopeindia.org/resources.